So, welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Lisa, I'm head of marketing at Torchbox, and I am here today with our speakers, Marnie and Sam, who are going to do the bulk of the talking. And we also have Helen with us as well, who's going to help answer our questions and also share a case study from a project that she's been working on. For those of you that are new to Torchbox, we are an employee-owned B Corp certified digital agency, and we partner with lots of amazing charities, many of which are here today. So we partner with Mind and Disasters Emergency Committee and Samaritans and Oxfam and RNIB. And we deliver high impact digital services and campaigns and also AI enabled strategies now as well to help you improve decision making and better services and increase your impact. But why we're here today is because Meta has become a bit unpredictable over the last couple of years, hasn't it? So between the health and wellness restrictions, rising CPMs, which is the metric used to measure the performance of the cost of every 1,000 impressions that your ad receives, tracking limitations, the ground keeps moving and it's really hard to plan anything at all. So we've been thinking about what we can do to help our charities to respond to this. And the one thing that has been going really well is email lead generation. This isn't new. Lots of charities are already using email, but plenty of them have programs, but they're not actively running it for lead generation in particular. Actually, we do have a quick poll that we can do that I'm just going to launch. So hopefully you can see that now, if that's on your screens. Let us know if you use email as part of your lead generation campaign. So we're not talking about newsletters. We're talking about actively using paid campaigns to bring new people into your list and then nurturing them towards deeper relationships. Interesting.
Mhm.
Thank you. I think that's most people, quite a mix. There we go. So it is quite a mix. So quite a few people, 30, 30, 30. So some key part of some strategies, or other people just experimenting it with it or not using it at all, which is quite consistent with what we've been seeing as well. And the Charity Digital Skills Report last year, which Sam's going to touch on as well, found that only 12% of charities rate themselves as excellent at email marketing. So today we are going to dig into what's actually happening with the Meta restrictions, what's working, and how you can build a lead gen approach that gives you a channel you actually own. We've got a few client case studies as well. In terms of housekeeping, this is a webinar, so you can see us, but we can't see you. But we would love to see your questions and comments. Everyone's very active today, which is brilliant in the chat. So send over your questions. We're going to go all the way through the presentation and then get to questions at the end. We are recording the session as well so that we can share it with you after, and we'll also share the slides and any resources that we reference as well. I think that's it from me, so I'm going to hand over to Marnie.
Thanks, Lisa. So I know that lots of you are here because you've already been impacted by the changes on Meta, or you're worried that you might be. But either way, we've put together what we've learnt over this last year into some guidance to help you shape your digital marketing programs in 2026. So let's talk about Meta. It's not any secret that it's fundamentally changed in the last few years. So I know, many of you will be familiar with the changes, but we wanted to just kind of reflect on where it's come from and the massive journey that we've been on. So let's not forget that in 2021, Apple made some changes that led to around 90% of users opting out of tracking. And then, as Lisa mentioned, costs have also risen sharply, so nearly doubling in the past 5 years. So with smaller audiences to go after, that means there's increased competition on the platform and that increases the costs. And then with costs, even last 2 weeks ago, we faced with more costs, unfortunately, as Meta have introduced a new digital service tax. And that equates to around kind of 2% of media costs that will be applied from the 1st of July of this year. And at the same time, we've got engagement patterns shifting. So Meta's usage has plateaued in many markets and usage is now kind of split across more channels. Then we have the restrictions. So just before Christmas in 2024, an alert popped up in Meta. Many of you will be very familiar with this moment, and restrictions on domains, conversions, and audiences were first announced. Then in July, Meta blocked and restricted custom audiences and conversions that included sensitive information. And then in October, Meta no longer allowed political, electoral, or social issues ads to run in the EU. So we've been keeping a close eye on whether the UK will follow suit here. And I won't go into loads of detail about all the categorizations. If you are categorized, you'll be very familiar with this. But what's really important is there's been several stages of charities being hit. So health and wellness, when that came about, it was also came into effect at the same time that financial services charities, politics, race, religion, personal hardship, which is the most subjective, were all hit with restrictions. Then we had, as I mentioned, political, electoral, or social issues ads also impacted in the EU. And then charities have been hit at different stages throughout 2025 and 2026 as periodic reviews have been completed. And what that means is that there's an uncertainty factor for other charities. So even if you haven't been affected, or if you've been unrestricted at one point, or you have a clean pixel, there's still that uncertainty factor that remains. In terms of what's actually restricted, I think it's important first to say that it's not caused by an incorrect setup or technical errors. These are platform policies designed to protect sensitive user data. But of course, these restrictions have several consequences for charities. So many organizations have lost full funnel conversion tracking on their websites. And whether you've got core restrictions, event restrictions, or full restrictions, this ultimately means that actions like donations, signups, or registrations can no longer always be tracked or optimized in the same way as before. And then in some cases, remarketing audiences have also been reduced or blocked, and that makes it harder to re-engage people who've shown an interest in your cause and create lookalikes of them. And that means that the signals available for Meta's optimizations algorithm are weaker, and that means that campaigns may take longer to learn, they can be less predictable, and even when charities appeal those categorizations, in many cases, full tracking can't be restored, even when everything is implemented incorrectly. So I know you're all dying to hear, is there some good news in all of this? Well, we have had a year of testing and learning what works temporarily, and what doesn't work. So we wanted to kind of pull this together and share that with you today. So some charities have been able to set up effective workarounds, whether that's making changes to their sites and getting recategorization. The health other category has been something that's been talked about a lot. Or by having clean domains with clean pixels. So charities like MS Society, Maggie's, and Breast Cancer Now, just to give a couple of examples, they host their lottery products on separate subdomains. And because each domain is categorized differently, you'll see differences and they can be reviewed and appealed separately. So this has worked in some cases. But what we're seeing is a very subjective experience across the sector, and a domain that was unrestricted can be restricted at a later date. So it's not something to kind of bank on. Bottom line, what we wanted to do today is pull together some of the guidance that we have, whether you're impacted now or not, just to help with your digital marketing programs based on the testing that we've done over the past 4 years. And this is grouped into 4 key areas. So firstly, tracking and attribution. So we'd recommend moving optimization higher up in the funnel, optimizing for clicks, video views, or on-platform leads, because they perform more reliably than those based on website conversions. That can mean shifting Meta's place in your digital program. And where you do measure conversions, so what we're really encouraging is shifting measurement away from Meta alone. So given all the opt-outs and restrictions, across cookies and websites as well, what we're encouraging is a holistic view of results. So using your CRM or your GA4 data to look at trends in donations, rather than relying purely on Ads Manager metrics. An example of this is, so you can see here in the graph that when the campaign was launched, we don't just get direct conversions from Meta. What we see is that we get conversions from direct, referral, and organic traffic that's increased when the activity was live. So this all helps to paint a picture of, the effectiveness of your ads, even if you can't directly attribute them. And I know that this is a phrase at the moment, but there is good reason for this. So channel diversification limits risk and it helps to reach audiences, especially as they become split across different channels. And just to be clear, we're not saying, put all your money into other channels, invest in TikTok, etc. Although it is worth mentioning that we are seeing TikTok working well for some charities. So in some cases, charities have been investing up to 40% of their media spend in the last 3 months into TikTok and seeing good results with that. But you do need to choose your channel mix based on your target audiences and invest in native creatives, ideally with a complementary organic strategy. I know that can be difficult. What we see from experience is that there can be a bit of difficulty with getting buy-in for test channels, but this goes back to that attribution point. So, thinking about those wider trends when you test and learn from new channels. The next point is around creatives. So creatives have become a lot more important now. Meta's responded by leaning heavily into AI systems like Andromeda. And what we're seeing is that as targeting and tracking weaken, the campaigns that perform the best are those that test genuinely different creative concepts that appeal to different personas and motivations. It's no longer about kind of finding the best ad. It's about simplifying your campaign structures with one or two audiences, building a library of messages that the algorithm can then use to target different audiences. And that would be made up of statics, videos, carousels, all to kind of test and learn there. And finally, charities are seeing success by focusing on lead generation as one of the ways to build and nurture your first party data. Rather than thinking about direct conversions, the environment is making it a lot harder than it used to be, and we need to kind of build and nurture the data that you own. And Sam is going to be talking about this in more detail. So I'll hand over to him.
Thanks, Marnie. So alongside everything we've just covered on Meta, there's also a wider shift happening across the charity sector. The most recent Charities Aid Foundation giving report shows that donations are down 10% year on year. And at the same time, advertising costs are rising, meaning that as a sector, it's kind of fair to say that right now charities are being squeezed from all sides. Where Meta has done a lot of the heavy lifting for charities in the past, it's now becoming less reliable and more restrictive. So whether you're being impacted by Meta already or you're worried that you could be in the future, the question becomes, how do you continue to grow when Meta is becoming more restrictive? And the short answer is that your own data has never been more important than it is now. Because in a tougher donor landscape, it's not just about acquisition anymore. It's about making more of the audience that you already do have and make sure that you're building on it as well. It's not all doom and gloom though. So as the good news is that we're seeing one approach work consistently across charities and subsectors, lead generation. The simplest way to think about lead generation is on social platforms, you don't own your audience. You're paying to access them. You're operating within their ecosystem, their rules, their algorithms, and not if, but when those rules change, like Marnie's shown, your performance can change overnight. On the other hand, when someone gives you their email address, that relationship becomes yours. You can contact them directly, build trust over time, and stay connected without relying on a single platform. It's the difference between renting and owning. On social, you're renting access to your audience. With email, you own it. With consent, of course, and making sure that you respect the right to be forgotten before anyone mentions GDPR, but obviously get the fundamentals right. The second reason this works is that conversions can happen on platform as well. Now, Marnie's covered this a little bit, and it's particularly important for charities that are impacted by restrictions or those worried about privacy and data sharing. So because of instead of relying on that website tracking, which as we've seen is becoming less reliable, you can capture that conversion directly within Meta using lead forms. That means that the user never has to leave the platform. It's a simpler experience, it's familiar, and in many cases, we see higher conversion rates as a result as well. But more importantly, you're still able to generate a meaningful conversion signal, even if your tracking has been restricted. And once someone has completed that form as well, they've taken that first step with your charity. you can build on it. So you can build on it through email, through remarketing. You can move them towards kind of higher value actions over time. Right now, for example, I'm running a campaign for a charity affected by the health and wellness restrictions. Their email remarketing audience on Meta is currently 3 times more cost effective in acquisition than cold audiences. If they didn't have a strong email list, then they would be missing out on a huge opportunity, and our catch-up calls wouldn't be quite so jolly. So this is particularly relevant for drinkware. So given their subject matter, alcohol and behaviour change, like many charities, they've been impacted by Meta restrictions. Now, we're still running campaigns to drive people to complete the drinking check, which is their main goal, but we're missing the conversion data to optimize those campaigns like we used to. We're forced to run traffic campaigns and use Google Analytics to do our best to roughly optimize for conversions. So instead of relying on that alone, what we've done is we've introduced lead generation to support it. Rather than asking people to complete the quiz straight away, we use lead generation as that first step. And what's really interesting here is that there isn't a traditional lead magnet. We're not offering a downloadable guide, we're not offering a value exchange or a physical product. The ask is simply to sign up to receive ongoing support and advice via email. It's a lighter first step, but it's really, really relevant to the goal of the charity. And importantly, that conversion happens on platform through a lead form. So even with the restrictions in place, we're still able to generate those meaningful conversion signals. And from there, we can follow up by email, and we can also use those audiences as form completers to strengthen our paid media campaigns, guiding people towards completing the drinking check over time. This is where we started to see the approach really work as well. Despite the restrictions, we were able to generate leads at a cost of £1.61 per lead, well below the M&R benchmarks figure of about £2.39 as the average cost per lead for Meta in 2025. And importantly, this wasn't driven by a downloadable asset or an incentive, which shows the strength of getting that offer right. It was just an offer of ongoing support. It's the right ask for their audience who are seeking that support. We also saw a really strong conversion rate as well of 6.1%, which again reinforces that lower friction ask. But the most important result was what happens next. Over 22% of those leads then went on to complete the drinking check straight away, which is Drinkaware's primary KPI. So this isn't just about generating those leads, it's also about creating a lower friction pathway to higher value actions over time. One of the most common questions that we do hear is if we're already running campaigns to this audience, won't lead gen compete? It's a really valid concern, but the short answer is not if it's done properly. Because you're already competing in the ad auction, not just with yourselves, but with other charities and even brands like Nike, Coca-Cola, and other huge global conglomerates with absolutely massive budgets. And the key difference is the ask. So if you're running 2 campaigns with a similar message to the same audience, then yes, it's going to be inefficient. But if you're running different types of campaigns, for example, a lead gen campaign and a donation campaign, they can actually work together to support each other. The key point is that the ask and the creative need to be distinct, as Marnie covered, and they need to be distinct from each other. So lead gen becomes that first lower friction touch point. And then you can build on that through remarketing, through email to move people towards higher value actions over time. So rather than competing, these campaigns are actually working together to warm audiences and improve overall performance. Now, the perfect example of lead gen building the list to support higher value conversions is the Wildlife Trust for Bedfordshire, Cambridgeshire, and Northamptonshire. That's a mouthful, but I got that right. As they are a charity supporting nature and wildlife, they haven't yet been restricted, but they saw a clear opportunity when it came to lead gen. While Drinkaware showed that you don't always need a lead magnet, here the lead magnet was actually central to the performance of the campaign. And who can argue, right? Look at the hedgehog, it's super cute. So the ads promote a seasonal digital download, in this case, a hedgehog-friendly gardening guide, but we tested others as well. So instead of asking for that sign up, there's a clear digital lead magnet delivered straight to their inbox. And what we've seen is that the strength of the offer has a direct impact on performance. For example, the hedgehog guide significantly outperformed other topics like bees or hoverflies, simply because it resonated more with their audience. I did check with my 3-year-old this morning, and she agreed that the hedgehog was the best. So here, the creative and the offer are doing a lot of the heavy lifting. And importantly, these leads aren't just staying at the top of the funnel. They're going on to take higher value actions, including purchasing memberships or volunteering, which is a key goal for the Wildlife Trust. So we're using that higher engagement and the lower cost per thousand impressions of lead gen effectively as prospecting, and then we're retargeting those audiences with membership asks across channels. And what lead gen really allows us to do here with the lower cost is to continuously test learn, and refine both the offer and the messaging as well. Whether that's new digital downloads, toolkits, or even physical value exchange that we're planning later this year, the aim is basically to keep on improving our performance over time and seeing if we can bring that kind of overall cost per lead down as well. Which brings us to the results. We've generated over 4,000 leads through these campaigns, which gives a really, really strong base to build from. On average, we're seeing a cost per lead of £2.09, again below that M&R figure. But what's really important is that the lead magnet is really dependent. The cost per lead is about the cost per lead is dependent on the lead magnet effectively, which is logical, but you also need to test and validate. And you'll also be able to find some of those insights for your charity as well. For example, we're also seeing a conversion rate of nearly 30%, so almost 1 in 3 people who click become a lead, which really highlights the impact of getting that value exchange right. And in this case, performance isn't just about the channel or overcoming restrictions, it's about the strength of the offer you're putting in front of people and the journey that you have afterwards. And finally, this is where there's a real opportunity. As Lisa mentioned earlier, across the UK charity sector, email marketing is still significantly underdeveloped, especially compared to our friends across the pond. So, according to the Charity Digital Skills Report of 2025, in the UK, only around 12% of charities rate themselves as excellent, and nearly 1 in 5 don't use email at all. So, while paid media is becoming more competitive and more restrictive, this is a channel where there's still huge room for growth. And for many charities, that means the answer isn't always to push harder on the same channels, but it's to scale sideways. With email, you're not paying for impressions, and you can start building audiences and relationships that can grow over time. At its core, lead generation is actually just a simple funnel. It's 3 steps: awareness, engagement, and conversion. First, awareness, using paid channels like Meta to drive signups. You're not asking for a donation. Success here is understanding that your audience, what exactly your audience is willing to exchange for their email address. And then engagement, where you deliver on what you promised and start building that relationship. At this point, make sure to keep on giving instead of taking. I think that in acquisition, there can be a kind of common pitfall at times to lose sight of that human aspect of marketing. And when we're looking at spreadsheets every day, it's really easy to forget that each one of those numbers is a person and they've all got thoughts and feelings just like you or me. And that's the key. The more you give, the more effort you put into building that relationship, the more trust and goodwill you build with that person behind that figure on your spreadsheet. And finally, for conversion, when the time is right and you've delivered value, you've earned the right to ask. You've built a relationship and you've earned a supporter who can help with your wider goals, whether that's donations or memberships, volunteering, events, or something else, whatever that might be. That's it. It's not about replacing what you're already doing, it's about adding a layer that helps everything else perform better. So, what it looks like in practice is building a journey, however short that might be. You don't need to overcomplicate it. Someone signs up through a paid ad. The first email delivers exactly what you promised, whether that's a guide, support, useful content. You're helping them understand who you are, what you do, and why it matters. You build a connection, and then only after that, once there's some level of familiarity, do you move towards a secondary action like a donation or a membership. So instead of asking a difficult question to a cold audience, you're warming the relationship first and asking only when the time is right. Now, just to pause here for a second and address the elephant in the room, AI. The question isn't whether it will impact email marketing, but how will it impact email marketing? Tools like Copilot and Gemini in this example can already summarize emails automatically. So the risk is if your emails don't offer real value, they may only ever be read by generative AI. But the flip side is this: the fundamentals haven't changed. If you're giving people a reason to open, read, and engage, that's what good email marketing looks like. If you're just sending content, however, that can be skimmed or summarized, that's where performance will drop. And it really reinforces the point that been going on about throughout. The more value that you give, the more your audience will engage, regardless of platform or technology. And then zooming back out, for this to work, there are 3 things that really matter. First, the foundations. That means having your email service provider and automation set up properly, and speed is critical here. The highest open rates I've seen are around about 80%, where the email is delivered within about 60 seconds. The lowest, low single digits, where that email has been delayed by a week or more because of a manual upload. That's the difference that speed makes. And then secondly, realistic expectations. There are loads of variables. Your brand, your offer, your creative. It's better to start small, learn, test, build, rather than expect those immediate results. Though if they do come, that's obviously a huge bonus. And then finally, this only works if you're thinking long term. because leads are just the starting point, and the real value comes from what you can do next, how you nurture that relationship, and you build towards action over time as well. At this point, it's worth showing what's possible when lead generation is done properly. But I do want to set expectations. If you're just starting out, results like this don't come overnight from simply switching on a lead generation campaign. Generating over 16,000 leads and seeing a 573% increase in donations doesn't happen in isolation. This was the result of a lot of hard work, cross-channel, integrated approach, combining paid media, email, creative, and a clear nurture strategy as well. But that's exactly the point. When lead generation is approached holistically, not as a standalone tactic, it doesn't just drive leads, it can have a significant impact on overall fundraising performance. And with that, I'll hand over to Helen for our final case study.
Thanks, Sam. So firstly, a little bit about Street Child and what they were aiming to achieve. So Street Child are a charity who work to ensure that children around the world have access to education, so that's particularly in areas of crisis and conflict. And we were working with them with the objective to grow their regular giving program. Street Child knew that email marketing was one of their most successful acquisition channels, but also that brand awareness and visibility was an ongoing challenge in an increasingly competitive charity market. They also knew that a supporter needed to be fully engaged with the charity, believe in the mission, and have full trust in the organisation in order to become a regular giver. And with this in mind, lead gen was the natural next step for them in order to keep their top of funnel buoyant. And it allows the supporter the consideration time they required in order to respond to a donation ask, whether that's a single or regular gift. The ask in the ad itself was really simple. We believe that every child deserves the right to education. Do you agree? Similar to Sam's Drinkaware campaign, there was no incentive, no value exchange. It was a simple message to ask if a supporter agreed with the charity's overall mission. And we tested this message using both every child and a child's name to determine which resonated better, with the hypothesis that naming the child would deliver more leads and a lower cost per lead. And spoiler alert, this proved to be true. So from a £1,500 budget, we delivered over 900 new leads into the charity's email database for them to then embark on the onward email journey with a donation ask further down the line. So that's about £1.50 a lead, again, well below the M&R benchmark that Sam mentioned previously. So this proves that you don't always need to give the supporter anything in return, and sometimes they will give their information simply because they believe in the cause. And this is the really great thing about lead gen. You don't need a huge budget in order to achieve great results. On that note, I'm going to hand back to Marnie to talk about some of the other things that you can do with lead gen.
Thanks, Helen. So yeah, we've talked about a couple of examples, hopefully just to bring that to life a little bit, but we also wanted to talk about what else you can do with lead generation. So we do get asked this a lot. Okay, great, you want to do lead gen, but what can we actually do? I think the easiest step on, and things you all have seen, all over Instagram, Facebook, are hand raisers. And that's because they are a simple and effective way to get leads. You can tie these to news moments, press coverage, advocacy wins. And as we saw with Street Child, results can be really strong. So we're also running a campaign right now with a CPL of £1.02. So yeah, they can be really, really cheap way to get in leads around a shared cause or a vision. Then digital downloads. So these can be simple to create. You could, use PDFs that are already existing on your website, for instance. And if that incentive is powerful enough, you can give straight away. So there's kind of huge benefits. Again, we see cost per leads are really low. Right now, we're running one for 82p. So yeah, it can be a really cheap way to get in emails as well. And then value exchange. So the benefit with this is that you receive a physical address, so you can then consider direct marketing fundraising. You wouldn't typically get postcode address from anything else, but there is obviously the cost attached to sending it and the product itself, even if it was a pin badge or stickers or tote bag, which are kind of the most common that we see. And then legacy gift in wills. So this is again something that charity's been running for a little while, but great to have that kind of softer ask to then bring people into your legacy program. And we've been trialing lead gen campaigns as well for events, registrations, and regular giving and membership as well. So all things you can think about. But I think just going back to Sam's point, it's really about the stewardship and what happens next after they get that kind of value exchange or they stick their hand up for a cause. It's really about, that difference between leads and donors and how that journey happens. So to recap, while the environment is harder than it used to be, what we're seeing is that charities that focus on kind of building first-party data, diversifying their channel mix, developing stronger creative and blended measurement are still finding ways to make meta work within their wider digital programs. Meta restrictions aren't going away, so this is just a way, to bring some of those tools as a way to combat that. And success really relies on having proper foundations and patience. So as Sam mentioned, it's not about that instant donation, it's about that long-term growth and long-term value. So if you can get all of that data to help you, bring to light what, your year one income is going to look like, or what that lifetime value will all help to kind of help you to run these types of campaigns.
Brilliant. And hopefully, if we've done our job right, you might now be thinking about how to actually apply this practically. So there are a few simple places that you can start. First, test lead generation alongside what you're already doing. It doesn't have to replace anything at all. You can just start out with a small campaign. And in fact, starting out with a small sub campaign is what we'd suggest for any charity that are just starting out with lead gen. Think about what your audience would genuinely value enough to give you their email address. And I'm certain that you'll already have this data. So what's a top performing page of your site, a blog post or a social post that's, had a significant amount of traffic or engagement? Could be a top performing creative as well from an ad, and basically build your offer on that. Then keep your follow-up simple. So focus on delivering that value and building that relationship. And importantly, measure success with the right lens as well. So immediate conversions and leads are really exciting, but holistically, what is it that those leads go on to do over time? Make sure you're trying to kind of keep track of the entry point of those leads, and then what behavior they have with your charity. In terms of retention, it's obviously important to make sure that kind of digital acquisition is just as valuable as other channels as well, and you've got that kind of holistic picture of what people are doing within your kind of supporter base as well. And if you're struggling with any of this, or you're just not sure where to start, that's exactly where we can help. Back to Lisa if you've got any questions.
We have got plenty of questions. Thank you, everybody. And everyone's been really well behaved and put them in the Q&A, which makes it so much easier as well. So that's why we kept the content quite short for today, so that we would have plenty of time for Q&A. So I hope you're all ready. I'm just going to go through them all. So Marnie, at the beginning, when we said about subdomains that Breast Cancer Now and MS Society use, is it just the domain itself that would be blocked or restricted, or is it everything?
Yeah, I mean, this can work at an individual level, but it does depend on the pixel that you've used on that domain. So if the pixel is shared across multiple different domains, then if one domain is restricted, that can impact the overall performance. So it can be helpful to split out those different domains with separate pixels. So hopefully that makes sense.
Thank you. And then we have a question. Is there a way where if you've got a campaign that you go quite broadly with, can you then push another campaign or a set of ad to a specific group from the first campaign, like further down the funnel?
Yeah, definitely. So I think there are two main kind of ways to do this. One is if you were to use something like a lead gen campaign, you can retarget form completers. And then you could also build lookalikes of form completers as well. So that's why lead gen is really valuable, because you've got that data, it's on Meta, whether you're restricted or not, you can retarget those users and you can find users that are similar to that as well. So it's really great if well, even if you're not restricted, but it's great if you're restricted as well. And then the second point is you can also, if you were to use kind of video creatives in your campaign, then you can make an audience of a certain percentage of watchers. So it could be 25% viewers who've seen 25% of the video, 50%, 75%, 100%, and you can test those audiences against each other as well. So yeah, retargeting as well and making sure that you've kind of got that funnel is a really important aspect of performance as well.
Thank you, Sam. Sorry, Dan, I just said I'd answered your question. It's disappeared now. I got trigger happy. So if you can post your one again for me, that would be great. Nandana said, how would you recommend doing meta lead gen work with the EU ban on political ads? They work for a climate campaigning organisation based in Ireland.
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
It is a tough one, and obviously you've got to work within the realms of possibilities, right? If Meta isn't working as a channel, are there other channels that you could explore? A lot of charities are moving to TikTok, to Reddit. It's about not trying to force it if it isn't right, if that makes sense. Because I think you're going to struggle with workarounds. And when we've worked with nature charities, particularly whenever there's a kind of a peer, like a a campaigning piece, it inevitably tends to get triggered. Marnie, I don't know if you've got anything to add on that.
No, yeah, unfortunately that one's a tough one. I mean, if you can find a way to have a kind of broad enough vision or value to get behind, then that can work. But obviously, having something really tangible that's in the news right now is the most effective. So it's kind of weighing up those points. I think, as Sam mentioned, there's other channels now that offer lead generation that can be really helpful to lean into.
Brilliant, thank you. I found Danny's as well. Lead gen works well for us, but with Meta's restrictions on website retargeting, we're struggling to reach the right people consistently. What would you recommend to maintain quality targeting and improve lead gen quality when retargeting options are limited?
I think the answer to that one is potentially what we said earlier. So bring in that lead generation maybe further down your funnel. So if you go out, say, with a video views campaign, and then you can retarget people who have watched a certain amount of that video, just to kind of then like improve the intent of that lead, I think.
Yeah, and then it also comes down to creatives as well, and trying to develop those personas with your creatives in order to reach the right people as well. And there's also a new feature for lead generation now of to optimize for leads completions as opposed to the volume of leads. So that could also be something to test as well.
Thank you. And what do you guys see the opportunity around soft opt-in being for charities thinking about doing lead generation with emails soon?
Natalie, thanks for that. That's a brilliant question. And we've actually got a blog coming out about it soon as well. It's a really interesting one because the private sector, it's not quite been a level playing field with the private sector and the charity sector. So for context, soft opt-ins and kind of PECA, it's all about kind of being able to contact people on the basis of legitimate interest. So people who might have signed up for something else and contacting them for maybe kind of, donation or kind of marketing purposes. So I think it's important to have a strategy in place. It's not a case of, pop all of your leads into your kind of marketing funnels, if that makes sense. It's making sure that you've got a plan in place that is kind of, I suppose, introducing them with the most respect possible. You're compliant as well, so making sure you are seeking that advice as well. And yeah, hopefully when the blog gets released as well, that will answer a few of those questions.
When's that coming, Sam? Can I include it in the follow-up email? Is that too soon?
Yeah, it's ready. I think it was just going through our compliance, so it should be ready to go.
All right, brilliant. Would Meta lead generation work even if the organization only uses Instagram and not Facebook?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So you can set a placement of just Instagram with your leads as well, and we do see really different results in terms of costs for on Instagram and Facebook depending on the ask. So definitely worth testing.
Brilliant. Are your cost per leads for opted in leads, when you ask people to provide their email address and opt in on the Meta form, do you also ask for a telephone number? Is conversion rate on phone and email similar? Do you know?
Awesome. So that's, I guess, three questions. The first is cost per opted in lead depends on the charity. I think that the important thing is like that Marnie mentioned in terms of optimizing towards leads who've taken a specific action. That could be if, provided your CRM, your email marketing platform speak with Meta, so they've got an API or a connection with Meta, then yes, you can definitely optimize towards that. And you can optimize for those, I guess, higher value leads, the people that will actually open your emails and will be opted in. I've just lost the question. Let me go to answer the second. The second part of it was when you're asking people to provide their email address and opt-in form on the Meta, do you ask for a telephone number? It depends. Some charities do. I think as a general rule of thumb, the more fields that you're going to ask someone, the higher the cost per lead, the lower kind of completion rate, because people, you're asking more things of someone, right? And they might start questioning, well, why do you need my phone number? And people can be quite a little bit not suspicious, but people, the less you ask, the more leads you'll get. But then it's also a qualifier. So the more fields that you have, potentially the higher quality lead that you can have. So if you've got a reason to ask for a telephone number, then by all means include it. You could also test them against each other. So you could test a lead form just with an email address against a lead form, and a name as well, potentially, against a lead form with email and phone. And then the third part was conversion rate for phone and email, similar. It depends on the charity. I think that goes hand in hand with the previous question, that if there's a valid, if it's perceived that you've got a valid reason to ask for them, then they'll give that information. Like for a physical value exchange, if you're asking for someone's address, it's logical that that you're gonna need an address to send them something. But if it's a digital download, they might be questioning if you're including a postcode or an address. So if you've got a valid reason, by all means include it and test it.
Thank you, Sam. For the digital exchange product, Marnie, that you were talking about, is it best to leave Meta lead gen for building that database, then at the end of the submission, bring them back to the website where they can download the product for free, or should there be an additional form on the website as well?
Great question. I mean, we try different things with different charities. I would say having I mean, the more steps that you bring in, again, the more drop-offs that you're going to get. So if you have an on-platform lead form and then you're offering a digital product, then at the end of their form they're receiving that. That's a very happy customer there. But if you wanted to collect more information and, as Sam mentioned, kind of get that higher quality lead, it could be that that you're asking for more information at that upfront point. But yeah, so it kind of depends. Yeah, depends. We do see differences in results in terms of the quality as well, depending on kind of targeting, things like that too.
Brilliant, thank you. Lauren, this one might need a bit of a wider discussion as well. We've been running a Gifts in Wills pack lead generation campaign in February and March, but it hasn't been as effective as previous years. How can we improve? Is it the time of year, e.g. Free Wills month and oversaturation?
Quite possibly, yes. Yeah, I think Free Wills Month is quite a competitive time of year for legacy marketing. Um, how can we improve for next year? I think potentially have a bit of a test and iterate approach while it's not Free Wills Month. So if you can try new creative, if you can try new messaging, things like that, while potentially it's a little bit less competitive, with that in mind, that then you'll have those kind of learnings by the time it comes round to next Free Wills Month in October, and you'll kind of have those learnings to build kind of potentially a better campaign then. Without kind of being able to see what you've been running directly, I think that, yeah, that is potentially the right approach to take for now.
Yeah, and just building on that as well, I think this is where that creative diversification comes in again. So if you can think about the types of people, is it families? Is it that older demographic that can work well? You're really thinking about those audiences and what types of creatives, and not just testing, a couple of variations. It's about having different concepts that you're testing all at the same time. And as Helen mentioned, ideally outside of those big moments, that you can ramp up activity when it matters.
Have a think as well if there's anything else that you can give, any other kind of value add that your audiences might find useful. And if you're stuck for ideas on that kind of creative diversification point, Meta's got an ads transparency library. You can see what other charities are doing as well. So have a little sneak peek of someone else's homework and see if you can get any ideas.
I think the next question is kind of related to that as well, and I don't know if you've fully answered it all, but what sort of targeting did you do when using the Legacy Gifts in Wills pack as the lead magnet? It's quite a heavy subject to put on people's feeds.
That's a great question. It depends, and I think it's looking at the specific life points that people might actually want that that gift the gift in wills pack. For example, is it someone who's just starting a family or they've just bought a house or something like that, but they're not ready to commit. They're potentially not going to be giving hopefully for a long time as they're going to have a long life, right? Or is it someone kind of closer to the end of their lives, maybe, kind of a slightly older demographic? Because I think that those different demographics will have very different messaging, very different needs, and that's kind of what you need to think about when it comes to kind of your avatar and your audience and who it is you're targeting and what they need.
Yeah, and I think on the point of it being a heavy subject to put on people's feed, I think that is how you frame it. So I think, if you frame it in a certain way, it doesn't necessarily need to be as kind of heavy as it sometimes is.
Thank you. And then we have the big question that everyone wants to know from Andrew. This may be unknown, but is there any indication or previous examples that Meta will in the future reverse changes, or is it more likely further restrictions will come later down the line?
Yeah, that's the big question. If we had the answer, we would definitely tell you. It does feel, though, with kind of the restrictions and the appeals that we've been going through, that nothing's going to be getting better, unfortunately. Yeah, it's more likely that you'll see kind of further restrictions on, new domains that you have, or, things that are within that same restriction. I don't know about the EU and kind of social issues, so we're keeping a close eye on that, and we'll let you know as soon as we do.
We constantly share and write blogs and update our LinkedIn with anything we know as we know it, and anything that we're doing to respond to changes as well. So follow us on LinkedIn if you're not already. This might be something for a follow-up. Could we share the approx lead to supporter conversion rates for the case studies that we've shown?
I think we probably need to check with the charities that have given consent in the first place, because that's not something we've agreed to share at this point.
Yeah, no problem. This also might need more of a follow-up, but it's from an anonymous person. Can we share our thoughts on the number of emails to include in a welcome journey for a third-party event, particularly for someone with multiple event dates?
How long is a piece of string? I think if you've got something valuable to say, then that's fine, right? Like don't send an email for the sake of sending an email. But if you've got something valuable or slightly different to say, or multiple events, there could be a focus of each date or event or whatever it is in each email, right? So I think segment where there's a reason to do so, but consolidate where possible. If you're given value, then people are going to be happy ultimately. And if your unsubscribe rates go up, then I'm sorry. And look at your strategy, I suppose, for next time.
Yeah, Simon's put in the chat as well, try testing a few journey lengths, and yeah, that's exactly it. We've tried that in the past, doing A/B tests with, X number versus Y number, whichever ones have the kind of the highest open rates, the highest click-through rates, and things like that. So yeah, I would suggest a test and iterate approach on that side as well for that journey.
Brilliant, thank you. And how does Meta lead generation compare with chatbot marketing tools like ManyChat for collecting leads for email marketing?
That's a great question. I used to build little automations with ManyChat back in a previous life, and it's great. It can be useful, but again, I think the most success that I've seen is basically delivering value. So, if you're delivering value through Meta, that's great. If you're delivering value through email, that's great. If you're delivering value through a chatbot, again, that's great, right? Value is value at the end of the day, and provided you're giving something, I'm probably going to sound like a broken record for this, but if you're giving, that's giving, you're building that relationship, and developing that relationship, hopefully, as we've kind of covered, is the most important thing to kind of, improving those kind of donor outcomes at the end of it as well. Hopefully that answers your questions, but if not, feel free to reach out to me afterwards and we can have a conversation.
Yeah, if you do have more questions after, you can respond to the follow-up email. We've just got one more. And Claire, we did have Grace from Samaritans on earlier as well. That's a nice comment there about their email journey, and lead gen is great. And then I think the final question, what is the typical return on ad spend you would expect from Meta ads for fundraising activity? Is that too broad?
It's again, yeah, it's very variable across different charities, the size of the charity, the size of the email list, things like that. So yeah, it does vary. I think there are some indication on kind of M&R benchmarks in terms of your kind of expected ROAS, but yeah, it does really vary.
Okay, then we have just got one more. Have you seen any organisations have luck with higher intent with lead gen on Meta, with the supporter being asked to verify via an SMS text?
That's a really, really good question. I don't have any case studies to hand on that, but I would imagine that it does have an improvement in the overall outcome because lead quality is obviously important, right? So if someone's verifying straight away, then they're a real human, and definitely for other channels as well, like Performance Max or for Google as well. I think you need to be like cognizant that there is kind of bot traffic available as well, and sometimes that kind of additional step can kind of help weed out, I suppose, that lower intent or kind of bots, if that makes sense.
Yes, that does. And then finally, someone just said, what does M&R stand for? So there's the M&R benchmark, which is released every year, which has stats for the sector in terms of performance. But I can't remember what M&R. There we are.
Yeah,
Thanks,
I've just
Marnie.
shared a
That was
link with
quick.
it. Hopefully that
It's
should
a really
help.
good
But
report. Yeah, it's
yeah,
really useful that comes
and
out.
the next one is coming out soon as well. I think it's coming out either at the end of this month or next month. So you'll have 2025 data there.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you, Sam, Marnie, and Helen. And thank you, everyone, for being so engaged and asking so many brilliant questions. And nearly everyone stuck around till the end as well. So we're super pleased you could all join us. I will send a follow-up email with the recording and the deck. So if you've got more questions or you want any help with your email lead generation, then let us know. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thanks.
Bye
Have a
bye.
good day.